Okay, so we're doing a video this time around to help address an issue that's been going on the internet. There's a lot of guys out there that feel that it's really necessary to overclean a plane. Now, by definition, there's overcleaning, undercleaning. There's a million different ways to look at it. Recently, a customer of mine decided to write a little article about it. It's up on the website at oldhandtool.com. And the article discusses the overcleaning process or ins and outs of it based off of a collector's view, right? And this collector is a collector and a user. There's multiple ways out there, multiple different types of guys out there. You got users, you got collector users, you got guys that just collect, period. They don't use. Then there's dealers. There's guys that flip stuff over the weekend to try to make some extra cash for their family. And there's eBay. One of the biggest problems that's out there that I see is what they're cleaning the planes with. So I'm going to kind of go over how we clean planes, to what degree we go over the plane, whether it be collectible or user, that type of thing. So this is going to be a two-part video series. The first video will be covering this guy right here, which is a Type 2B Miller's Falls number 11. This is a collectible plane. This is a plane that you do not want to overclean. Collectors do not like planes that are overcleaned, and a lot of collectors actually don't like planes that were cleaned at all. So for the guys out there that do eBay, yes, stuff does sell for a lot more money when it is shiny because it photographs easier, it photographs better. You're likely to get a return or a complaint from a collector who bought something and paid a lot of money for it. So this will avoid, for you eBayers out there, this is going to avoid that problem where the collector gets a hold of you and says, hey, it's not like it was in the pictures. I want my money back. I got to send you your plane back. Then you get stuck with A, paying return shipping, and B, a dissatisfied customer that's not going to buy from you again. So you need to be able to identify first what's a collectible plane and what is a user plane. So we'll be going over that in another video at another time as well, at least trying to help you determine what is and isn't collectible, for starters. The second video will be focused on this guy. A Type 4 Miller's Falls number 14. This is just a jack plane. It was made later on. The collectors don't really get excited over them, especially when they're in this kind of condition to start with. So it's not something you have to worry about too much. So we're going to make this into a user. This is what this plane's good for. It's a good user. We will cover it being tuned and being cleaned, ready for the workbench. So the details for this will be different than the details for the number 11. So let's start off with what not to use. And I've been asked a million times why I don't like it. Turns the metal gray. So this is the stuff we're talking about right here. Vinegar, white vinegar. Do not dip your planes in white vinegar. It's not good for the metal. It eats the pores. It eats the plane. It's an acid. Acids are not good for cast iron. They're not good for tool steel. It's going to hurt the plane. It's also going to hurt the value of the plane, whether it's a user or it's a collectible plane. So, and yes, you can get rid of the gray. You can hide the fact that you dipped it in acid. The problem is you have to abrade the plane. So if you're going to abrade the plane because you dipped it in acid, why not just abrade the plane to start with? So that's my opinion on this. So white vinegar, nails on a chalkboard. If I buy a plane that's been dipped in vinegar, I'm going to return that plane. And most guys will. So if you're selling these planes, do not dump them in vinegar. It's not good for them, and they look like crap when they're done. You may think, because you don't know any better, that it looks good. It doesn't look good. It looks really bad. And I'll give you a real quick example of what vinegar looks like. Showed this to you in another video. I bought this off of eBay. Paid pretty good money for it, actually, too. And in the pictures, it looked great. However, they dipped this entire thing in vinegar. And I showed in the previous video, you can literally see the surface of gray just kind of flaking off of there. It looks like crap. This plane is no longer collectible. So the guy who cleaned it in vinegar, he screwed up big time. Don't be that guy. Another thing that guys have used in the past, not as many guys, but they've used it in the past. Navel jelly does the same thing. It's disgusting. It leaves the plane gray when it's done. And if you got pitting, it's going to enhance the pitting. It's going to make the pitting look worse. Do not use navel jelly. Now, the following products, I don't endorse the company who made the products. They just work for me. They've worked for me in the past, and they're what I use. What we use, if we have to clean a plane, most of the planes on oldhandtool.com have been not touched at all. They've been left completely alone. The reason is most of them are collectible. And guys that buy collectible planes, they want to be able to do the cleaning themselves. They have their own process. They have their own degree of cleaning that they want to go through. Don't go beyond that if it's a collector. Let them handle it. They would much rather clean the plane, and they'll actually pay you more for it in the long run to get it the way it was left the last person who used it. They want the history. They want the character. They want all the stuff that comes along with a plane that was just found. So when it's collectible, don't touch it. But these are the things that I use to clean my planes. Inside this little deal right here, looks like an octopus, is Dawn dish detergent. So if it happens to be the brand I use, you can use whatever you want as far as detergents go. I like Dawn because it cuts grease, it cuts old oils, it cuts that kind of thing. So let's get this guy here. It's just inside of this. Simple Green. This time I will endorse a product. This was introduced to me by Pat Thomas. He's a good friend, and he's a very, very, very prolific collector. I used to use Formula 88, which is available in Home Depot. It works well. It really does, but it does not work near as well as this biodegradable product that you can get at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, pretty much anywhere. You'll need a wire brush, a fine wire brush. This guy's a real soft one. You don't want to go for a coarse wire brush. Something nice and soft and easy just to get dirt in and out of like nooks and crannies on certain things. And again, I'll show you how all these are used in the process. Quad-aught steel wool. Don't care what manufacturer you buy it from. Doesn't matter where you buy it from. Just make sure it's quad-aught. 4 zeros. It's a fine steel wool. Don't want to go any coarser than that. You're going to want a razor blade. A clean, unused razor blade. It's very important to start with an unused razor blade. You will probably end up using 3 of these in the process of cleaning a plane. I've gotten away sometimes with 2, but I've never gotten away with just 1. So 3 of these, and these are cheap. You buy them in bulk packs, just like this guy here. Bulk packs. Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, wherever you got to go, and it doesn't matter if they're super high quality. Again, you're just scraping surface crap off. Gloves. I'm a big fan of nitrile gloves. They're tough. These actually, I bought these at Harbor Freight. They're cheap. They work really well. They don't rip as easily, and they're chemical resistant. Toothpaste. You guys are going to think I'm nuts. For brass, regular toothpaste. A toothbrush. Make sure you get a clean one. I've got 2 toothbrushes here. You'll see. I've got a white one right here with the soft bristles that are kind of folded over and whatnot. And then I've got one that's hard bristles that's brand new. It's you want something that's a little stiffer and it's not got a bunch of stuff embedded in it to do what you're going to do with the toothpaste later on. And then I always have a worn out toothbrush, an old beat up worn out toothbrush. I use this to clean the Japanning inside of the plane, which I'll show you in a few minutes. This was recommended to me recently. I've used it. Works good. It works really good. And all it does is just cleans up the surface on the wood. Again, you don't want to go too far. Shiny is not good on a collectible. You don't want shiny. You want natural preservation of the piece. That's it. Just preserve. Keep the history. Keep everything about the plane correct. Just make it look a little nicer for the shelf. And that's what we're going to do with the number 11. We're going to make it look nice. as if it was going into a collection. You're going to need some 3-in-1 oil or something similar to 3-in-1 oil. I happen to like this stuff. It works great, and it lasts a while. You don't need very much anyways. And I keep this guy around just to kind of clean out nooks and crannies and stuff, but I rarely use it. So, let's move on to the sink. This is the wet part. Unfortunately, I have not found a way that I'm happy with to do a dry cleanup. There are ways to do it. There's a lot of guys out there that do it that way. I prefer the wet way to get the crud and the crap out of the inside of the plane and whatnot. So we'll go to the sink next and I'll show you. I'm going to take the plane apart off camera and then you'll be able to see how each part's cleaned. Okay, so I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, so the first thing you're doing is you've got to go through and look at everything. It's all, if you look inside of here, it's all greasy, grimy, and disgusting, right? Inside of here, same thing, greasy, grimy, disgusting. This plane does have a little bit of the enamels missing on the toe here, but that's okay. It's a collectible plane. This does not justify respraying this entire plane. It's just not necessary. I couldn't have chosen a better example here because this plane, the lever cap's disgusting. It's gross. It's really, really, really gross. One thing you have to pay attention to on the Miller's Falls planes, especially the Bs, anything that's a B. So this is fine, right? This is all somewhat shiny metal. It's been used, so none of this has been blued. But you will have a situation where you have parts that have been blued. If you look here, this has been blued. And you want to try to retain that as much as you can, right? Because that's part of the original character of the plane. That's how it came from the factory. So what I do in that case is I put everything in a cup. Everything that's going to fit. This is the top of like a laundry detergent cap. I put this in here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the dish detergent to the contents. Your wife will kill you. You need to use quite a bit because you want to degrease everything without going too far. And then take and add a little bit of warm water. In this case, I'm going straight hot, right? Just fill it up, set it off to the side. Let it sit, let it do its thing. All right, your next thing you're going to do is you need to rinse all this stuff down, rinse all this stuff off, right? You're going to take damp. You got to move quickly when you're doing this stuff because of the fact that it's going to flash rust. So luckily, when it's old, it's got oils and waxes and stuff like that you know, the previous owner had cared for it. Hopefully, the previous owner had cared for it. On Miller's Falls planes, on the Frog, on the enamel, on a Type 1, do not do this procedure. The enamel on a Type 1 is like a semi-satin, kind of flat-ish deal, and it will be a problem. You will take off some of that enamel, and you don't want to do that. Next thing you do, I have a spray bottle with a Simple Green in it. You're going to take and soak everything down once it finally comes out here. You soak everything down in the Simple Green. Just mist it all over with the Simple Green. Let it really coat and just kind of sit there for a second. Typically, I'll go to the irons first. I'll get those cleaned up the best I can. And for the irons, I will use a wire brush and a razor blade. Right? So the irons and the chip breakers. And the chip breaker, for example, put it at an angle like this, and just kind of go over it. This just gets rid of the surface crap off the top, right? Just kind of clean it up a little bit here. You're not putting a lot of pressure down on it. Just kind of scuffing it over and cleaning it up. And I should be wearing gloves to do this, but I'm not. I forgot to put them on. And now my hands are wet, so putting them on is a pain in the rear end. I'll just deal with it. Just kind of go over everything a little bit. Any kind of surface rust that's on there, and clean that off. I will then go Put a little bit more, and you're going to keep kind of spraying it down because it goes away. Take this wire brush, holding it in my hand like this, just kind of lightly going over it. Do not press down very hard. Just lightly going over. You'll see a little bit of brown there where it's taken off the stuff that's down in the voids, right? A dragging motion is a lot of times helpful as well. Just kind of drag it back. And again, you're not trying to make this thing bright and shiny. You're trying to get rid of the active rust. Anything that's active that could hurt the plane. On something collectible, it's all about preserving the piece, not about making it shiny. It's not a Ferrari. You don't need to make it shiny. You just need to get the crap out of there so that it doesn't continue to degrade. That's it. Just clean it up a little bit there, right? Over the inside, just kind of clean it up. Yeah, part of the reason why you should use gloves. And I just got poked already by the wire brush. Just kind of clean that up a little bit. Do one part at a time. This part's ready to rock and roll. Immediately dry it. And I'll have my camera assistant run the parts back over to the bench, because once they're dry, you don't want to get them wet again. All right, so going on to the next part, you've got the iron itself. So let's go over the iron. Again, same thing. Just kind of go over the surface, clean it up. You don't have to go crazy. This iron is not going to be shiny and new perfect. It's just not going to be, because it did rust a little bit at the top up here. It is what it is, and it's okay. And again, I'm kind of cutting into it. I'm not dragging it. Kind of just scraping the surface, right? Just trying to get rid of that surface rust that's there so it doesn't get worse. And I apologize, I'm not a trained YouTuber here, so you're probably missing half of what I'm doing. All right, so that's that side. Same thing up here. Luckily, there's not a whole lot of rust at the bottom to contend with. So I'm just kind of cleaning the back here. And the same thing again. Now we're going to go back to the wire brush. Put a little bit of the simple green on there. And that simple green kind of acts as a lubricant a little bit. And again, be careful with back here. I mean, it may be sharp. Luckily, this one's not. You just kind of go over it like this. Clean it up a little bit. Check your progress under the water, right? I'm looking for active rust on the surface there, right? And get down in there, scrub a little bit harder, and again, it's a soft wire brush. So your soft wire brush isn't going to damage the surface as much. Kind of go back and forth until you get any of the orange stuff gone. The orange rust is the bad stuff. That's the stuff you got to get rid of, or it's going to continue to get worse. So right there, that's looking pretty okay on that iron. I could probably get a little bit more right up there at the top. If you see where it's darker, I'll clean that up a little bit more, and right there, right? So again, going back to the simple green, and just kind of go with that one spot. Again, you can get slightly aggressive with this type of wire brush because it's not coarse. But don't go nuts. But get in there with a little bit of elbow grease just to clean that stuff out of there. And not all that black's going to go away. It is what it is, and that's okay. Leave the character of the plane. And that's actually pretty good right there. That's pretty all right. And go to the back. There's still some simple green on there. And just kind of do the same thing on the back. And again, we're preserving here. We're not making shiny. This is a big deal. This is a collectible plane. You're not going to be using this thing. You're going to be putting it on a shelf. and hoping to preserve its value and its character. All right, so there's a little spot right here that's got a little bit of that orange rust on it. Again, just kind of go over it a little bit. It's not fuzzy, so you don't really need to go after it with the razor blade, right? Just kind of, that's good. Everything looks great on this iron now. Just dry it, and again, it's metal. Immediately dry it. Don't let it sit there and sit around on the counter, because it'll flash rust all over again. Then you're right back to where you were. That's not a good thing, because then you're having to do more work on it than you'd like. All right, your frog. All right, again, going back over it again. You will end up using a lot of simple green, and it is what it is. It's a lot cheaper than not using it. It's a lot better to use it than to not use it. Now, you're going to want to clean out these holes real well where they're threaded. A key with that is blowing it out when it's done. You can use some compressed air, use keyboard cleaner. The keyboard compressed air is really good. Again, you're going through here, kind of work into the corners, back inside, work real good. You'll see there's a little tiny, what looks like a little bit of red on there. Again, you've got to be gentle. So a lot better than if you used something that was caustic, right, or acidic. Simple green is not acidic that I know of. There's no acid in it that I know of. It obviously doesn't act like there's an acid in it, so that's a good thing. And again, just get everything all nice and cleaned out. You want to make sure that there's no chance for the enamel at any kind of point to get lifted, right? Because you left rust in there. Rinse the old girl off here. And you'll notice it's already looking really nice, right? I mean, it's just a little bit of simple green looking great. Now what I do for this, you've got some black that's on here. I do not go after that with a razor blade, because it'll just chew the surface up. I just kind of go over it with the brush. Lightly with the brush. It's never going to be perfectly shiny again, but you can bring it back a little bit. And again, dragging, just clean up the best you can, right? You don't want to take all of its character away. Just get that active rust off of there so it doesn't take the rest. This is missing most of its nickel on that end, so it's not going to come back too bright. But again, get rid of the active rust so it doesn't lift whatever's left of the nickel. All right. All right, so now you've got pretty much good there. Everything's pretty much good there. Your yolk here, you can kind of be careful of the paint though. Be real careful of the paint. Just kind of go over the yolk a little bit like that. Again, I'm dragging because I have better control of what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going over it just a little bit. And that should be good. Rinse that off. If your depth adjustment nuts post is rusty, just kind of real lightly brush over it. Again, you've got to be careful of the enamel that's there. You got to be careful of the enamel that's there. Again, the idea is not to make this thing brand new. Just roughly go over the end of it, changing directions until you get it cleaned up. That's all good to go. Now, rinse it off, double check. There's a little bit of real faint surface rust on the surface here. I'm just going to kind of go over it. Little short strokes so you don't affect the enamel on the sides. Little short strokes. Clean this up here on the face. And that is ready to rock and roll. I'm going to go ahead and dry it off real quick and get it over to the bench. Do not use your wife's bath towel. She will probably make you sleep on the couch. You're going to want to use, I keep an old couple of towels around, full-size bath towels that have seen better days, and I use those. The key is really, really, really carefully dry every surface of every edge of everywhere. Anywhere water can sit it will cause rust, even if it doesn't look like it's causing rust. And if you're a seller and you leave that thing wet anywhere, it will rust on its way to your customer's house. That's not good, and it will make them mad. All right, now the nitty gritty. You got the body here. Let's do the body next. I'm going to take this guy, slide this out of the way, take this guy, little short circular strokes inside the body, and then long ways this way. Don't press down too hard. You can scratch the enamel, or in the case of a Stanley, you can scratch the Japanning. So the idea, again, is not to make everything shiny. It's just to clean all the crud out, because anytime you leave dust or debris in there, that leaves an opening for moisture to hang out. You don't want to do that. And clean out inside of here. And then clean your cheeks off. Get some of that simple green on there. All right, what we're going to end up doing here is we want to let this kind of soak a little bit. So I'm going to spray everything down. Do the same thing with your lever cap. Just kind of wipe it down. Again, be careful right around in where that red is for the Miller's Falls. And then just kind of go over it a little bit. And we're going to let this soak for about 5 minutes. All right, so we'll be right back to you in just a few minutes while this is soaking. Okay, all right, we're back. It's been sitting about 5 minutes. You don't want to let it sit too long, but sit long enough for that simple green to kind of soak down in there and get some of that crap out of there. And again, we're really doing the same thing I was just doing a minute ago. You're just kind of getting into the nooks and crannies here, try to get it all out of there. I like toothbrushes because they get down in the spots where you can't get with anything else, right? And again, just kind of going through everything, scrub it all down, and just get everything clean, all right? And that's really the key here, is to protect the plane. We just want to protect it, and that's it. All right. Now, I just used this other razor blade over here. You do not want to use the same razor blade again, because it is now got little spots and it's scratched and that kind of thing. You don't want to do that. So you get a fresh, brand new razor blade to do your cheeks, right? And again, I like to lubricate what I'm working on here. So, little spray. Take your new razor blade at an angle, just kind of go over it. There are better razor blades to do this with. I just happen to like this. Specifically, I happen to like these. And again, what you're trying to get rid of here isn't color. You're just trying to get rid of surface rust, right? We'll even that whole thing out in a few minutes with oil and steel wool. We'll make it a little bit nicer. But for the time being, all you're really doing is just getting rid of any active rust off the surface, okay? Nothing major. You're not really trying to get bare down in it. And again, there's not much here, just around the edges, right? When you go across the mouth, angle like this. Do not go straight at it. Angle. As you go across the mouth, you'll end up scratching the opening of the mouth. Go with the direction of the grain or the milling marks, right? You don't want to go against it, or you're going to have scratches across the edge. This plane actually wasn't as bad. I don't think I'm going to have to grab another razor blade. I don't think I've been able to do one all the way through yet. So that's a good thing. Right. Now around here, you got to be real careful what you do around the mark, the cheek mark on these Miller's Falls. That cheek mark's important to the collector. If that cheek mark's not there, it may be a subtype. There is a rare number 11, Miller's Falls number 11, that happens to not have a cheek stamp, and it's a type 2. There's also a rare, or rarer, actually not even really rare, or scarcer version of a type 1 that does have a cheek stamp. And a couple of really beautiful collections have those pieces in there. But they're not real easy to find. All right, that's it. So all we're doing here, again, just getting all the surface crud and crap off the plane and get it down to what's left there, oils and waxes and whatnot. So that's good to go. You have to make sure you get all the soap out of this plane and get all the water. It's extremely important you get all the water and all the soap off of this sole. It's cast iron. It'll flash rust instantly. So what I'm doing right now, you can't see on the camera, I'm just drying everything out really, really, really well so that it doesn't start rusting again. And another thing, too, to take into consideration, if you were to sand this cheek underwater or sand the sole underwater, and then you were to take your time getting over to get a towel to dry it off, you would actually end up with more flash rust than if you leave the patina on the plane. The patina actually protects the plane. You know, guys will get planes off of eBay or buy them off Facebook or whatever, and they end up coming to them and they're like, oh man, I bought this plane, the guy restored it, it was wonderful, it was great, but it's got this film of rust over it and I can't get rid of that film of rust. And what that's from a lot of times is the guy will sand it underwater and then he'll dry it off. Well, you've just exposed fresh cast iron, which is going to rust really fast. There's no patina there to protect it. All right, so again, I'm going to go back over this again with a toothbrush, right? Just to kind of clean all the cracks and crevices and whatnot out. You do not want to go over a lever cap with a razor blade. It's just not a good idea. You will, especially if it's got nickel, you'll scratch the nickel. I don't care if the thing is brand new, the razor blade's brand new or not. You will still scratch the nickel. It looks bad. It just looks like screeches and scratches, and then you end up having to go too far with it, and that's not good. All right. So now I've got to be real careful with this red paint in behind here. The paint that's on this one is in really good shape, and you want to leave it that way. You don't want to screw that up. So what I've got to do here, I'm going to use my brush, but I'm going to do it very carefully. I mean, absolute light kid touch over the surface of this. And again, just trying to get rid of any kind of surface rust that's on there. Not trying to go too far, and as you can see, I'm already bringing up a little bit of brown. That brown is rust. You'd be surprised, sometimes underneath that brown coating is actually still fresh nickel. I've been surprised before. That a lever cap was trashed and found out the nickel was just coated in gunk and crap, and doing this saved it. And brought it right back out so you could see it, and it was beautiful. And again, you're just going over it light. You're not going crazy here. You do not want to go crazy, because you will take that paint right out of the inside of there. You can go a little harder down here at the bottom, but again, don't overdo it. A collector would appreciate the history of the plane more if you just leave the history there. And it's nice when you have a plane that's all bright and shiny and beautiful and wonderful, and that is nice, but not required. You can go a little more aggressive on the sides. That is okay. And then always get clean up underneath here. This is a place where water likes to settle and create rust and then peel your nickel. You can go back over it. This plane, or this lever cap here, has actually got most of its nickels gone. And that black that's there is gook. I'm actually going to use very lightly, go over it with this, see if I can get maybe some of that off of there without scratching it. And no, it doesn't look like it's really doing us any good. Yeah, it's still with the same brown that's on there. Go over it with this again. We'll have to address that in a few minutes with the next process, which is a dry process. So that's that. This cap is just dirty. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about that. Nothing you can do about that. It's just crud that's caked on over time. Going through, just drying it real quick. Again, getting all the nooks and crannies. Flip your lever actuator up, clean underneath it. or dry underneath it. Make sure it's all nice and dry everywhere, especially on these knuckle joint or these jointed lever caps. Make sure they're real dry. All right, next thing, your depth wheel. This is where a lot of people make a mistake. They overdo the depth wheel, right? They make it all shiny. No, not a good thing. So you take, right, your toothbrush. You notice that this is the last thing I went to out of all the stuff that was sitting here that was soaking. I wanted this to soak the longest. And I'm just kind of going around on the inside edges, just kind of cleaning it with the simple green in here. Just kind of getting down inside of there real well. Go along the edges there. Now you can take the wire brush when you're done, just really lightly with the wire brush, clean it up. And by the way, if your wire brush is really worn and it's not fresh like this one, you're going to want to go get a fresh one to do this. Because the really worn ones, you'll end up with sharp edges on them, and it leaves scratches all over the place on the metal surface, especially if it's brass. My lord, brass is the worst. What I do is I'll take the corner of this, tuck it in till it's inside, and I'll go the same direction as the machining marks inside. And again, I'm just trying to clean the crap out of there best I can. It brightens it up a little bit. You can still see a little rust on the inside. If you look down in here, though, you still will see a little bit of rust. And again, you can kind of just work your way around at an angle. I'm trying to get a better camera angle here for you. But unfortunately, I am right-handed. And just kind of clean that out, right? And then go across here lightly. Do not scrub down on this. It will make it bright and shiny and look like crap. And just kind of go over it. And just in case you guys are wondering, you're thinking to yourself, wow, he's going through a lot of aggravation. This is just for a plane to not look good at the end. It's just not, it doesn't make any sense, right? The plane to a collector looks original. It looks real. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Respect its age, you know. You wouldn't go out and take a really rare car and modify it with a bunch of modern parts if it was fine, right? Now, if it's a busted car, yeah, you do all kinds of stuff to it to make it run again, and it's no longer original, so who cares? Which I'll discuss that a little bit later on again about what's collectible and what's not. Listen, it's okay, in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion. There's a lot of opinions out there. If you've got a plane that's been welded, you got a Type 1 number 4 that's been welded. That's a very collectible plane. Say it's just a real rat trap. It's a real gross plane. It's messed up. It's never going to be collectible. Whatever collector value that was there is gone. The parts aren't in good shape, right? You couldn't fix another plane with the parts. Then that's okay. Clean that thing up and use it. It's a user. It's a user, and that's fine, right? And again, all I'm doing here is just cleaning the threads out, right? Don't need to add anything else. Just cleaning the threads out. Get the rust out of the threads. That's why a lot of these things, guys will get them wet, right? They won't clean the threads out. They'll take something that's already actively rusty. They won't clean the rust out of them, and they don't dry them, and then they put them back in the planes. And you go to take it apart when you get it to adjust the tote or the knob or whatever, and then all of a sudden, snap. The end of the rod is now in the plane, and you've got to figure out how to get that rod out. Then, guys, you have to get real creative to get those things out of there. It's because the last guy who cleaned it used water, like I'm using now, and they didn't dry it thoroughly or clean the threads out. All right, now we're off into the parts that are in here. All right, I'll drain some of this off. So be careful, these parts are slippery as heck. All right, if you can see here, there's actually quite a bit of rust inside of those threads, rust and crud. Again, just go through. I drag one direction. Just enough to clean that stuff out of there. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to take it to your wire wheel on your bench. I mean, that is a faster way to do it, but it's obvious it's been hit with a wire wheel, right? So this way, just looks like an original part that's been cleaned, but lightly. All right, this guy right here has got beautiful bluing on it. These are rarely still blue. You have to go real gentle, and I mean, I'm barely putting pressure on there, and that's just to get rid of that crap that's on the surface. That bluing will go away so fast it'll make your head spin. It's just a thin layer of bluing. Just clean it. All right, just kind of, I'm literally just barely touching this thing. I want to leave as much of that bluing on there as possible. That's original to the plane, and it's important to the plane. They use that bluing for corrosion resistance, which is why you're able to clean the plane and get the stuff off the surface of it, because it did its job. And I'll see if I can show you what it looks like when it's done. You can see a lot of the bluing's still there. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. Looks great. All right, now, frog adjustment screw. There's no bluing on these, so clean them. Clean them good. Again, this has been soaking and done, right? So it's been getting degreased, and it's already kind of pre-lubricated, really, because of the dish detergent that's on there. Just kind of go across it, get all the surface rust off of it, get all the crap off of it. Just clean it up, and look how beautiful that is. It almost looks like it's new, and it was just barely cleaned. That's okay. That's honest, right? I didn't take it over to a jeweler's wheel and polish the heck out of it. That's not honest. That's not the plane just cleaned up, right? Again, same thing here. Clean your threads. Clean your threads off real good. You want this thing to go in and out of its socket real well. You want it to thread into the pocket, no problem, right? Again, you won't see scratch marks all over the surface from the wire brush. If you did that with a wire wheel, you'd see little slap marks. Okay, so again, the same thing with the waste nuts for the tote and the knob. Unfortunately, since this surface has a lot more access to oxygen and dormant moisture settling down, you're going to end up with a lot more issues. This is probably not going to clean up and still have the bluing. It'll be nice, but unfortunately, it's not the case. Now, we'll go over what restoration techniques. You can actually re-blue these and make it look right, and we've done that before, doing a proper restoration for Miller's Falls, and I've actually re-blued them, and they look great, right? But in this case, that's not the case. This is not being completely restored. And again, we're just real lightly going over the surface. You don't want to see bright metal. That's not good. Not on this plane, not good, right? Kind of going over the same thing. There's a little bit of rust around the top edges. Just hold it gently. And again, you're knocking that rust back. You will oil these later, so don't be concerned with scrubbing every little tiny square inch of everything out of there. You want to try to be respectful to the age of the plane. All right. Here's your retainer nut for the chip breaker and the iron. Again, these are usually buried down in the plane. You just have to just lightly go over them. They're normally not that bad, right? So don't get super crazy with them. Typically, I'll just hold them this way and just kind of go around the threads, just to kind of knock the crap out of the threads. Again, you don't want these to rust. It's extremely important when you put your plane back together that this specific screw is very dry. I can't tell you how many times I bought a plane and I couldn't get the daggum chip breaker off the iron because it was wet, and then it rusted to the iron. Tool steel rusts real fast, guys. It really does. It doesn't like water. All right, now Our lever cap. This is something you have to kind of think about, right? So our lever cap has got some corrosion to the top of it, right? We know there's some black spots there. So if I was to make this beautiful and shiny and stick it back on there, it's not going to look right. It's going to be a sore thumb from 10 miles away. I see it all the time and it looks horrible, right? So I'm just going to be gentle with this guy. I'm not going to go too far. Again, you're just removing surface rust. Don't get crazy with this because it's going to look funny. It's not going to look right, right? So that's good right there. That's it. Now again, these are typically not too rusty. By the way, real easy to lose because I'm talking about the lubrication. The soap makes it kind of like holding onto an eel. Again, dropping it again. So again, just kind of go through, knock the loose rust out. You want this to be able to come in and out no problem, right? And that's it. That's it. Done. I mean, don't beat the thing to death. Here's your other waste nut. Holding these things is a booger. Miller's Falls did make a jeweler's hand vise. Those things are great. I don't know if I would use them in this situation. They're a little too valuable. Alfred brace is what they, or Alfred vise, hand vise. I don't know if I would use it for this situation because it would get wet. But, you know, something similar to that would be good. As you can see, this is tedious, but it's absolutely worth the aggravation here. Absolutely worth it to keep the history of the piece intact. And watch out, these suckers will run off on you. It's really, really important to make sure that these are dry as well. These are the frog retainer screws. Make sure these are really dry as well, because if you don't, again, can't get the frog off. You want to adjust it, any of that stuff. So you want to also clean the threads out really well. You'll find chasing screws, if you're doing this a lot, chasing screws is kind of part of the game. You'll learn different holding techniques. My problem is I'm trying to hold them for the camera to see them. I can't hold on to the little suckers. Too slick. See, these are clean for the most part anyways, because they're buried underneath the iron and the chip breaker. These are okay if they're clean. Clean. That's all right. Never going to see them. Just don't polish them. And by the way, the washers, these little guys are a pain in the butt. You have to kind of just do your best. Well, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll hold a corner like this. Then you literally end up taking skin off as you do it. But it is what it is. Just don't do a bunch of them in a row and you'll be fine. I'll flip it over. And again, you just get rid of any kind of active rust. There's not much here for these guys. This plane, the inside of this plane was fine. I think it was probably just sitting outside in a shed someplace, and moisture, as the temperature changed, moisture became an issue for it. And here, instead of drying each one of them as I go, again, it's not a big deal. This is been blued, it looks like, which is not normal, or not common for frog screws to have been blued. But happens. All right, the next screw is real important that you're careful with it, because it has been blued, and it's the same screw that holds in that plate that's we've actually managed to save the bluing on. So on this head, there's not very much bluing left. Again, I'm just going to really lightly touch it and leave that be as it sits. It still looks great though. It's going to blend in fine with the part that's the plate that's bluing, the frog adjustment plate. You got to be careful when you're coming and doing the threads here that you don't let the wire slide up over the edge. So I'm using my finger kind of to keep it away. All right, so that literally, guys, that's the individual parts. That's the cleaning part. That's the pre setup to final. That should be good to go. Now let's go back to the bench. I'll be back over there in a few minutes and we'll go over the rest of it. All right, we're back. All right, so I'm going to take a little of the canned air we were talking about earlier and just kind of blow out what's in there. You'll see a little bit of moisture come out of this. Same thing here. You can see a little bit of water there. Same thing in the back. Just blow those holes out. Now we're going to go back and a little bit and oil those holes anyways, so you don't have to worry about too much. Just kind of wipe everything down. You'll see here, there's already a little bit of surface rust forming back on here, which we'll take care of that in a minute. And you'll see that this is already starting to turn a little bit orange. We'll take care of that as well. Just have to stop it in its tracks where it's at. So, look at the surface there. Nice and clean, no surface rust on there. Looks good, right? Everything's good to go there. You'll see a little bit of that darkness on this surface. As I tip it back and forth in the light, you'll see right in here, you'll see some of that darkness. That's something we're not going to be able to get rid of too much, but we'll clean it up a little bit. All right, so everything is good to go at this point. Everything's clean. It's been de-rusted for the most part. You see the cheeks here? They're still kind of a darker black, but you'll see spots of lighter areas and darker areas. That's typical, right? Because we used a razor blade, so it's going to get some of the highest stuff out and then some of the low stuff out. Spin this around so you can see. All right, this guy, same thing. It's going to have some lighter spots here and some darker spots up here. We're going to blend that in a minute and make it look nice. Okay, so your next thing you got to do is you're going to do the cheeks. The cheeks and the sole of the plane. That's the first priority, number one priority. And this is going to be done with a little bit of steel wool and a little bit of oil. You want to make sure you're using oil when you do this, and then wipe it all down. What I typically do is I'll use the 3-in-1, and I'll put a little bit on the side, just like that, a little string of it on there. I'll take a little of the steel wool. You don't need a lot of it, right? A little bit of steel wool. This stuff goes quite a ways. All right, so you take this and just kind of go back and forth over it. And again, you're not trying to shine the plane up. You're just trying to get rid of some of that other gook that didn't come out from the process with the scraping, right? Just kind of go over the whole thing. And again, it's oil, so you can let it sit there. It's not going to flash rust. It's oil. It's a good thing, right? Kind of go over the logo a little bit. If it's on my shelf and I want to see what it is, I want that logo area to be nice and clean and bright. So, same thing here. Apply some oil across the base. And again, you're looking for a little bumps. Bumps are active rust, right? They're basically like you see surface rust in a car, or rust under the surface of a car. It's the same kind of theory, right? Just take it, kind of go around a little bit here. And again, other than to spread the oil out, which is what I'm doing here, you're going to want to go straight with the grain of the cast iron, right? The milling marks that are on there, there is a grain to cast iron. So just kind of go straight with it. Just kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like this. Just kind of clean the whole surface real well. There's a tiny bit of pitting at the very heel of this, so kind of work down in there, right into the edge there, and go across everything, clean it all up nice. I'll turn it around so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. You just kind of go with the grain here, right? There's a little bit of black right there. Clean that, kind of go over it, brighten that up just a touch. Go to this cheek over here. Same thing, right? A little string of oil across. You don't need much. 3-in-1 oil goes a long way. I've probably had that for 4 or 5 months. I got a couple of them, but it lasts a while. Put it that way. There's a little bit of that black up here on the top. Same thing here. Kind of go over it. You're going to end up with spots that are a little darker than other spots. And a lot of times it's kind of fun because you'll see the handprints of a previous owner in those dark spots. It's kind of neat. In this case, there's a little bit of scratching right here. If you look, you see a little bit of scratching right here and a little bit of scratching right here. I probably should have changed the razor blade out, which I didn't, and we'll clean that up here for a second, or in a second. All right, so first thing I'm going to do here, now that I've wiped everything down with the steel wool, Because I'm going to, if I can get the oily hands, if I can get one of these out of here, that'd be good. Take a fresh razor blade, take it, lay it flat, and just kind of go over the surface here. Again, I'm kind of cleaning some of that gook off. The oil will break down a lot of that if it's waxes or oils that were in somebody's hand. You take some of that down a little bit, right? You want it to look a little cleaner, a little nicer, but not too much. Right? We're not breaking out polishing cloths and crap like that on the cheeks. Just kind of brighten it up a little bit. All right, that's it. Just real simple. You look on the very top up here, it's pretty black along the top edge right in here. It's pretty black. So I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit. Just kind of blend it back. Kind of go the same going across there. You got to be careful because as you use this razor blade, you're going to create a little bit of a burr on it. And you can actually scratch it. Scratch the cast iron again. And so just kind of move it around however you can. Sorry if I can't get a better camera angle on this one, but I kind of got to pay attention to what I'm doing here. And again, don't go too far. It's really easy to go way too far and ruin its value. Now, take this, again, back over it, right? Just wipe it all down. This cheek really was the offending cheek. This was probably sitting down or possibly sitting up and moisture sat on it. I would probably venture to bet this was sitting down based on the pattern that's on here. So same thing here. This looks pretty good except for one little spot here and here. Again, I'll take the razor blade and kind of just scuff over it real quick. Real simple. Lightly. Do not grind down on it. Same thing here. Little spot there. Little spot there. Just kind of clean it up, right? That's good to go. Wipe it all down again. Again, we're working with oil here, so it's okay if you let it sit there. That's the beauty of having the oil there. This cheek, same thing. There's a little bit there, a little bit there. We'll address that with the razor blade. I'm not going to go too crazy with it, but enough to kind of bring some of that down. And it's actually starting to catch a little bit. Switch sides. There we go. And again, you'll get a burr on there pretty quick. I mean, you're taking metal and scratching metal. So, and if you run a burnisher over a scraper blade, it's the same theory, right? Now, we're all good there. I'm going to take this paper towel, long streak, wipe it down. That's it. Wipe it down. You're not trying to remove all the oil. You're just trying to remove the oil off the surface. Just kind of brighten up a little bit there. All right, the cheeks and the sole are now done for this plane. Now what I like to do is just kind of wipe down the inside of the plane with the slightly oily rag, right? Just wipe it down. That any kind of rust that might be starting to develop under the surface of this enamel is going to be discouraged. Any water that wants to rest, any moisture that wants to rest in there, it's going to be discouraged because oil and water don't mix, right? We were taught that, I think, in kindergarten, right? So, or first grade. I'm sure there's a teacher out there that'll clarify when oil and water don't mix is taught. Likely my wife. Just kind of go over everything. Now, on your metal surfaces, right here, you're going to see a little bit of that orangey stuff, right? If the camera can pick it up, there's a little bit of orangey there, right? That's where the enamel's missing, or in the case of a Stanley, Japanning. You can take a little bit of oil, let it puddle right there. Take your cloth, or your paper towel in this case, and just dab it. Rub it in there. Get it kind of down on it. That's going to prohibit that rust from spreading. And again, you're trying to preserve this plane. You're not trying to make it look new. If you want new, you go buy Lee Nielsen. You go buy Clifton. You go buy one of those guys. This is not an exercise in trying to make a plane new, right? You go to the same here. Now we were talking about there's a little bit of orange inside of here. That's actually not a good thing. Take your steel wool, just kind of lightly go over that. Just lightly. Just enough to kind of knock it back, right? Now there's oil because there's oil soaked into that. Just kind of touch it. That's it. Just touch it a little bit. It's good to go. Now, it's recommended to use a like a washcloth or something by doing this, because the paper towel will just break up on you, but it's okay. All right, so that part's done. That's good to go. Do the same thing with the frog, right? And again, don't use much. You're not trying to make it look wet and weird. Take it, wipe the surface down. Wipe the surface down. And if you're a machinist, and I have one of my customers, a good, very, very, very good friend of mine. He's a machinist, and let me tell you, whale oil is his friend at work, and he likes to coat his planes down with oil. I'll tell you what, though, his planes will never rust because he's constantly oiling them and constantly caring for them. He's a very high-end collector. He likes Type 1s, and he's very careful with them. He wants them to be just the way they were when he got them, as much as possible. Again, just kind of going over everything with a little bit of oil, just a light surface amount of oil, just kind of protecting those surfaces a bit. And go back over it. You'll see the cast iron will actually soak some of the oil in, and it will it'll kind of disappear on you. All right, so that's done. That part's taken care of. We're going to take a dry paper towel and kind of just quick wipe. That's it. Just get all the extra stuff off there. If not, if you take it into a even remotely dusty environment, this thing will be gray from the dust settling on it real quick. All right, so that's good. So now your frog and your sole are good to go. So let's focus next on the iron. Oh, geez, that's good for it. Let's focus on the iron and the chip breaker. Same thing. Put a little bit of oil on both surfaces. Same here. Now this time you're going to want to go real light with the steel wool, right? Because it will scratch the surface. Just kind of lightly go over it. Keep your strokes as long as possible so that the strokes are even. Just lightly go over it. Again, any kind of issues you've got with rust starting to try to form on the surface rust, especially since we used water, you're trying to prevent that from spreading anywhere, right? So same thing on the back here. Every surface, get it all nice and cleaned up, and let that sit off to the side. It's no big deal for it to sit there because, again, it's oil. Same thing here. Take the oil, spread it around a little bit, kind of go over it. On the iron, I press down a little bit more because I really want to work that oil into the surface of the iron, right? And you're still going with the grain direction of the steel that's here. Same thing here, kind of go over it. And you can watch the surface and tell if the steel wool is getting dry. And so you know to put more oil. All right, that's there. I'm going to let those sit just like that, nice and wet. For the time being, we'll wipe them off in a few minutes. Now let's move on to the lever cap. Just going to take this, go over it. And again, you're going to find that dark spot's really going to show up. And this is where you hear people talk about, well, that's a really honest plane. The honesty is in the flaws. Seeing the flaws makes it an honest plane, right? You want to see it being honest. A collector would rather have a plane that's got dark spots and honest than have a plane that's been over cleaned and no longer honest, right? Same thing on the back, just kind of work it over. I'm just adding oil really to the back of here. I'm not doing anything to add to it or subtract from its looks. And so let that sit off to the side. And same thing inside of here, right? Now we were talking about there was a little bit of gray, a little bit of orange inside of here. Just going to kind of work into the edges inside of there. Get a nice coat of oil in there. All right, same thing on the knurling. Just going to add a little oil there. And then we're going to let that sit for a few minutes. All right, we've sat for a few minutes now. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of wipe everything down. Dry paper towel, wipe everything down. of these parts. All right. Wipe everything down. Set that off. There, you can still see it there. Well, you can't see it there, can you? All right, so put that there. Same thing here. Wipe it all off. And you're not really scrubbing down. You want to leave some oil on the surface there. That's important. Same thing with the iron. Wipe it off. And look at the iron. If you see dry spots, you may have to apply a little bit more oil. But just leave enough oil on there for it to be somewhat slippery, which is why I kept tossing stuff around there for a few minutes. There you go. Well, that's good. This guy, just kind of work with it a little bit on the inside. Clean at that. There you go. All right. Now, the rest of this stuff is literally just oil it. There's no steel wool involved. So you're going to take your waste nuts, line up here, and all this stuff, and this is just going to get rubbed down with oil. That's it, just to prevent it from rusting anymore. Especially this guy. I mean, this thing looks great. Just want to get some oil on that. And this screw turned out really, 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 really nice for what's there. So, what I do for this, take a little rag, like this guy, leave half of that. I'm going to take and fold it a few times. Give me a nice flat surface, right? Like this. And take this, lay it on there. First things first, put a little bit of oil on those threads. All right. Take, quick twist, then use oil from there and just kind of coat the part a little bit. All right, simple, simple. This guy, a little bit of oil on it, and the rag will get, or the paper towel here will get a little bit more saturated over time. But that's okay, because again, you're oiling parts. Just kind of work the oil in that side, work the oil in that side, lay it out to the side. A little bit there on the head. Take oil the threads. You don't want to take too much of that oil out of those threads. And this is, everybody's gotten that one plane where you couldn't get the daggone post out, and that was from somebody leaving it wet, not doing what they were supposed to do with it. Leave the oil there. The oil's there to protect what's going on, right? That's a good thing. You're better having more oil than having less oil when it comes to these parts. If you want to literally saturate the darn thing in oil and put it back together, that's perfectly fine. Again, your idea is to protect from rust. These are moving parts, basically. You got to protect them from rust. Put that together. These guys, now what I do with these guys is a little different. I'll do that in just a second here. Let me kind of just coat the outside in oil there a little bit. Do that. This one, again, oil. And you're going to want to take these threads. Remember I was telling you before that this will get stuck. These really soak that down and kind of turn it and let the oil run down on that. It's kind of hard to get in there to spread it out. And set that there. All right, now for these guys, I actually, crazy enough, I take and put a couple of drops of oil inside of them. Right? And I'll take them and put that face down and then kind of work the oil down the threads. So now this is soaked in oil inside. That's a good thing. You can turn them face up. Again, same thing, kind of work the oil down in them. Wipe them down. Turn it face up again. Washers, simple. Other washer, very simple. The rods, probably the best way to do the rods is to just soak the rag in oil now. At least where they're at. I'll fold it over a little bit, leave it damp, take the rods, and just kind of thread, right? And again, this is where a rag helps. Like a nice shop rag would probably do the trick. Not you end up fighting paper towel. I'll get that out of there in a minute. And that is actually from somebody, if you look carefully there, somebody had this plane apart before, And they actually used a pair of vice grips. And there's little notches right there along the edge. It's still going to work fine, but that's what's grabbing the paper towel. This whole thing's coated in oil. It's a good thing. Same thing here. Wipe it down, or use the soaked cloth here, or paper towel. Just kind of get it in there, and that's good to go. All right, we'll come back in a few minutes and put everything back together after we clean the tote knob. Okay, all right. So I had to get some. I thought I needed to go get something for the tote and the knob, but I don't. So we're good to go there. All right. So first things first, we're going to want to put frog back together. Get everything for the frog put back together. I mean, the assembly part you guys probably don't need any kind of education on. If you're watching this video, you're likely somewhat familiar with the form and function of a plane, or at least the assembly or disassembly. Let me crank this back down on here where it goes. That's your, of course, your frog adjuster plate and screw. All right, let's put the frog back. Actually, before I do that, put this guy on the back here. All right, now I'm going to take a little bit of oil again and coat the thread and put it back in place. You want enough oil to go inside of there to prevent it from seizing up with rust later on. So anyway, we did blow it out. So that's the most important part, to get the water out of the threaded hole itself. And then you're adding oil, just in case any water did hang out in the threads inside. The oil is going to help prevent it from jamming up on you. So let's go ahead and add screws here. And then we'll adjust with the frog almost tightened down. We'll actually adjust the frog position, which is actually pretty much nailed perfect first try. So, and he's a little bit of a bump forward, and that's pretty much about it. Sit there. All right. It literally needed virtually nothing to go forward. So screw crank down. Do not over crank the frog screws. It's not a good idea. Greasy hands. Problem with working with oil. Okay. All right, so we're back together there. This guy, I like to take the oil, turn it at an angle, put it in the back. Be liberal with it. Let it run back in there. Right? Now take it. And run it down. See how fast that spins now? It's because it's got a lot of oil on it. Run it back and forth a little bit. Let that oil coat the post. Right? It should literally just run like that. It's all smooth and all easy. Don't go all the way back. Kind of back it off like maybe a full turn. All right. Now, obviously we don't want to put the tote knob on, or any of those parts on yet, because we still got to put the tote knob on there. So first thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of oil, drop it in there, a little bit of oil, drop it in there, and then I'll take this guy and run it in place. Again, we got that notchy because of the daggum previous use of vice grips. Just kind of run it down inside of there, and then let it go from there. All right, set this off to the side for the moment. Oil's off my hands for the most part. You don't want to get those oils all over the tote and the knob. All right, tote and knob, real important. Just leave this wood fresh. Don't sand it down. There is a little bit of crazing on the surface here. So it is what it is. Leave that alone. Leave it in place. That's honest age. Take a little bit of Howard's. Put it on there. And run it around. Right? Oh, that didn't work out. well as I expected it to there. So there we go. That's better. A little of that on there. And just kind of squeeze it into itself. Take the knob. Just kind of circulate it around a little bit. You're just kind of getting it damp a little. Go inside of there and just kind of clean that out, right? Let that sit for a second. Same thing with the tote. Work it into the surfaces. And the idea is to protect what's here. And you'll end up putting wax into those micro cracks that are caused by the crazing. And you'll brighten it up. It's going to look nice and protect the wood as well. So, as you can see here, it's already a huge improvement from what was going on. You don't need to sand the heck out of it to make it look nice. It's going to look nice just by wiping it down and getting it some nourishment. If you're hungry, you eat. Well, if your wood's hungry, you feed it. Take this dry paper towel, put your knob first, get the excess off the surface, and that's it. I mean, that looks great. That looks just the way it should look. It's going to feel silky like it's supposed to feel, and you haven't done anything to it. You haven't hurt its value at all. You're not going to be able to close up those micro cracks. It's not going to happen. Don't try. You'll have to take the finish off to do that. But what you can do is you can make it an honest plane. Honest is more valuable. Dishonest is not. Just wipe everything down. Beautiful. That looks great. That looks just the way it should look. Yeah. Take that guy, drop it there. Miller's Falls. Do not overcrank those. Not so much a problem on the tote, but on the knob it's definitely a problem. It will split the knob. Put your knob down on there. That's it. Just a little turn. Drop you some oil on here. Now you notice I didn't oil the waste nuts again, right? That's because we soaked a bunch of oil in there before. A little bit of there. Take your chip breaker and iron, scoot it down close to the edge. Drop a little bit of oil on the end of this guy. Let it run off the edge. Over time, by the way, this oil will allow some of that patinaed look to come back. So if you have this plane for 10 years on a collector shelf, it's going to start to get that brownish, that pleasant brownish, tannish black that's known as patina, and patina is a good thing. Patina is nice. Now, I got a little bit of oil on my gloves still. I'm just kind of wiping it down a little bit just so that there's plenty on there. I'm going to take this whole guy, back inside of there. Feel for the. Go ahead and feel for the lateral. Drop this in. Pull the iron back. That's loose. Give it about a full turn. Nope, still loose. Give it about another full turn. That's good. That's all you need, especially on a collector item. And if you're gonna ship it, do not crank that thing down. It's a bad idea. A little bit of crap in there. That's good. Okay, so this normally, if you're going to use it as a bad thing, on a collector piece, you want that. Just leave it loose. It's better for long-term storage anyways. Just leave it be. And that's a clean plane, guys. That is a collector-ready clean plane. It's not been over-cleaned. It's not been under-cleaned. It's protected, and it's ready for a shelf. It's ready for showtime, if you want to call it that. It's good to go. So there you go. That's about it. And I just realized all my lights are off. So if this is too dark for you to see, I really apologize. Actually, I'm gonna get my cameraman to turn the lights on so you can actually see the focus, see what the final product looks like. So, brief moment with the technical difficulty here. Be nice to be able to see what I'm doing here. All right, guys. I don't know. Can you see that a little better? It's got some brown. It's got a lot of the original patina still on it. It feels nice. It looks nice. The rosewood on this thing is beautiful, and it's original. It's an honest plane. It's very honest. Again, a lot of your patina's still there. It's good to go. This is collector quality, ready to rock and roll for a collector's shelf. All right, so in closing in all this, the key is try to leave its history. That's the most important thing. You want to leave the history of the plane there. Guys that collect don't just collect to say they have the biggest plane collections, right? Most of the guys that are drawn to collections are history buffs. They love the history of the piece. If you clean it and make it shiny, you take that history away. One of my favorite pieces I've ever had, quick side story, is a Van Camp. And I love this plane because the fingerprints from the original, I guess, user or the last person who had it, they must have done a lot of work with walnut. And anybody who here that's a woodworker has ever worked with walnut, it makes your hands black. And every time you touch something, it makes that black go onto that. Well, somebody had used it significantly on, I'm assuming, black walnut, and it left their handprint on the tote. It was a beautiful thing. This whole thing's clean. I did it the same way this one was done. It's just wonderful. And it had this beautiful character to it. Cheek stamps, right? On non-Miller's Falls stuff. Cheek stamps are beautiful if they're done well. You know, it's all character. This is all history. It's all the kind of things that tell you somebody loved it so much they put their name in it. They didn't want somebody else in their shop to steal it. So they put their name on it. They loved that tool. That tool made them a living. It was, you know, a week's wages sometimes, 3 days wages for them. It was very important for them to keep it nice. You now are the person that's supposed to take care of that plane. You have a responsibility. Again, this is all my opinion. You have a responsibility to protect the heritage of that plane. Listen, if you have a number 4, a Type 16 number 4, who cares? Clean it, use it. When you see what I do with the Type 4, 14, you're going to be like, oh man, but he just said 5 minutes ago, don't over clean it. It's a Type 4, 14. As a user, it's your best friend at the bench. Well, this one is. Some of the Type 4s you don't want, but this one specifically, it can be your best friend at the bench. It's got to tune it, do all that stuff to it. If you're going to tune it, you might as well clean it up nice. If you're not going to tune it, there's no point in doing all that. And by the way, a plane that looks like this is capable of making the same shaving of a plane that'll blow your eyeballs out because it's bright and shiny. Think about all the beautiful furniture this plane probably made. And I guarantee it didn't always look brand new. It's like a brand new truck. I bought a brand new truck a while back. It's dirty. It's probably got scratches on it somewhere. It's a truck. Now, 40 years from now, 60 years from now, somebody might treat it a little differently. They might try to restore it, bring it back. And they might want to leave it just the way it is so they can feel the way I feel driving my truck. And it's a bad analogy, but it's best I can do for that in that specific case scenario. But have respect for the stuff that's collectible. There's so much user stuff out there, you can do whatever you want with it. And you can make it look really nice. You can make little tiny thin shavings perfect. But please, 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 let the stuff that survived all the history, the rarer stuff, the scarcer stuff, the stuff that there's less of, that's the stuff that's collectible. Let that stuff be original. Let it be honest. Let it tell its story without fabricating. You know, I mean, everybody loves Grandpa's little story he's got, right? Everybody loves Grandpa's story. It's a little bit white lie here, a little bit fabricated there, but it's a good story. It's a very good story. But the ones about him that are honest from back in the days, the real stuff, the stuff that you take and give to your kids, those are the good stories. Those are the solid stories. Let planes like this tell its story. I mean, that's all I ask. Let this plane tell its story. You want to take your number 4, type 16, and take it to wood? It doesn't have much of a story to tell you anyways. Go ahead. Use it. Enjoy it. They're great planes. All right, guys. For now, that's your Type 2B Miller's Falls number 11. Rosewood tote and knob. Beautiful plane. It's ready to go to a collector. The next video, stay tuned for it, is going to be this dirty monster. It's going to get a tune. It's going to be ready to go to the bench because that's what this is for. This is ready to go to the bench. Okay, guys? Until next time, enjoy.